Call the roll.
Councilman Delarada.
Here.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Here.
Councilman McPartlin.
Here.
Councilwoman Weber.
Here.
Supervisor Syed.
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At least that's quite the Pledge of Allegiance there.
We're going to go slightly out of order. Instead of opening up privilege of the floor, we are going to head into our presentations. Our first presentation tonight we have is going to be given by Town Planner Laura Robertson. She's going to be discussing the proposed rezoning of 500 Balltown Road from R2 medium density residential to N-MU neighborhood mixed use.
So the planning board has been looking at a rezone of the ODHEC parcel for quite some time. It was sort of a task that was outlined in our comprehensive plan. And it's something that we've been pursuing, I would say, actually not very quickly at all. But we are trying because we do understand that it's important. Over the course of multiple years, we have looked at creating a mixed-use zone with the intent that we would probably apply it in an area that was mixed between residential and commercial. And now we've sort of actually targeted that parcel for the rezone. The planning board has discussed it at multiple times, but it's been in the paper quite a bit. You guys have never had a formal briefing on it. So what I think we're planning on doing tonight is I'll go through actually the exact presentation that we had at the planning board level for the public hearing. And then I can just update you guys on some of the things that the planning board discussed at the last meeting. And then if you have any questions that you can just follow up at the end. So I think hopefully this will clarify a little bit of what the planning board is trying to do. So 500 Balltown Road is maybe not affectionately known as the ODHEC complex. I don't actually think that's its official name anymore, but it's that group of buildings that's like north of the Raymore and Flanagan property and south of Hannaford, bounded by Consol Road and Balltown Road. And its official address is 500 Balltown Road. The project site is for 43.8 total acres. It's owned by New York State. Currently, New York State is not subject to our zoning code. It was built immune from our zoning code, and it could continue to be immune from our zoning code for as long as the state wants to hold on to it. So it is not subject to our zoning regulations, but the town board has the right to review zoning regulations from time to time and make sure that the underlying zoning is going to meet what we want to see there in the future if it was ever to be sold. The school district is South Colony. The surrounding zoning to the south is the Mohawk Commons Plaza. That's zone shopping center commercial. To the east, you have like the Consol Road residential homes, Torres Road. That's all medium density residential. To the northwest, you have a low density residential, although that's Hummingbird Manor, and they were a PUD or a sort of cluster zoning, average density development. And the neighborhood commercial is the Hannaford Plaza there. You do kitty corners to it, have the golf course there for City of Schenectady, and then on the Schenectady side, it's like the Schenectady single family residential. It's currently zoned R2. So if the state were going to surplus the property at this time, the uses that would be allowed in R2 are, typically what you'd see in Old Niskuna or Country Club, medium density residential, minimum lot size of 9,000 square feet. There are some special uses that are included in R2 that require a special use permit from the town board. Places of worship, hospitals, nursing homes, just kind of things that you tend to see mixed into single family uses. And Route 7 east of Mohawk Road is a good example also of R2. The zone change proposal started in the 2013 comprehensive plan. We were really looking at what was left and what we wanted to see happen. And at that time, the comprehensive plan with public input really said, this is probably not the most appropriate place to have R2. Is there some kind of mixed zone where we could promote pedestrian sort of scale, add in transit, really work with the commercial that we have, supplement that a little bit, and then add a lot more of walkable streetscapes, open spaces, interconnected streets, and a variety of housing. So when the planning board was reviewing the neighborhood mixed use, the primary uses that they looked at, I think this is about a year ago, is single-family homes and multifamily dwelling units, open recreational space, combined with small retail, banking, hospitality, and community services. The special uses do include gas stations, indoor recreational facilities, and nursing homes. I do want to say that, it was our first attempt at neighborhood mixed use, and we don't actually think that gas stations are a compatible use within the neighborhood mixed use zone. So if we're going to re-look at that code, that's something that we'd be removing. And there are no neighborhood mixed use zones currently in Niskuna, but this we think is a really good spot for it. So if you want to see mixed use zoning in practice, no, this is not the exact same zoning that we would be trying to implement, but it's something that's close by, that's similar, is the shop restaurants along Plaza Route 9 entrance. The townhomes are in the rear. So I think there's I've eaten here, there's a couple restaurants at the front, like a burger place and a Subway place. And in the back, they have stacked townhomes, and then it gradiates into single family homes. And then you guys all probably know when Global Foundries went in, they put a lot of apartments, and underneath the apartments, they put the commercial businesses on. I think the general consensus is that the commercial businesses here haven't fully built, and there's a lot of vacancies still here. And it's a little bit more dense than what we'd be looking at in Niskayuna. But this is an example of mixed-use development in Malta. So the benefits of the neighborhood mixed-use zoning are they place an emphasis on open public spaces. They are used, they're really trying to create neighborhood gathering spaces, breaking up the built-out landscaping, and having a good place for people to gather and walk and enjoy. They're supposed to have a lot of connectivity. They're supposed to be very walkable. It's like planning term of live, work, play. Planners love their little terms. So it doesn't preclude driving, but it's really meant to be on a scale that welcomes human people in the street and welcomes people to have activity in the street. The convenience is if you locate a variety of the services in close proximity to each other, hopefully people don't actually need to be driving as much. We would like to see connections to Mohawk Commons. We would like to see connections to the residences. So you could really have a lot of people moving in and out, and hopefully not always choosing to use a car. The original concerns that the planning department identified when we were initially looking at the rezone is that sometimes people are concerned it's a residential town. Why do we need mixed use development? The planning board hears kind of often that we have vacancies in our commercial space. Do we really need more commercial space? This is a different type of commercial space than we would typically see. I mean, you really want it to be small scale, open glass, inviting, not the big box stores. Something that would be complementary to the kind of commercial that we have now. And also, is an R2 development really what we would want to see there? I mean, it is surrounded by a lot of commercial. And although you can do good things with R2 subdivisions in terms of connectivity, they aren't always the most pedestrian-friendly, walkable places subdivision-wise. There's minimum lot sizes that, can't necessarily be clustered, and it may be a missed opportunity not to really look at something that has more clustering, more open space, and, just a new, some amenities that the town really doesn't have for people right now. I know people would be concerned that the different zoning would increase traffic. It's difficult with a rezone to really say that. I mean, you could look at the density numbers, but if you're making a more walkable environment, it may end up being balanced out. The zone change is not what will deal with the density necessarily. The density would be dealt with when we had a proposal and they were coming forward to do a site plan, and they would have to do traffic studies. and mitigation if it was needed. But the zone change R2 single-family homes are a large traffic generator, like much larger, generally speaking, than apartments and townhomes and things that tend to not have the families, large families with multiple cars. If you just look at the traffic studies, you have a much higher generation number from single-family homes than different housings. And the zone change will diminish Niskayuna's quality of life. I know we've heard that there's a lot of concern that if we did this zone change, that it would all be commercial and we would be losing all our open space and they would plow over the wetlands, and that is not the intent of this zoning at all. The wetlands are federally protected and it would be pretty difficult to get a permit to disturb those wetlands, but neighborhood mixed use really puts a premium on open space and public space and places for people to walk, and it is not meant to be something that's going to invite a lot of traffic and a lot of problems. So the planning board has listened to the public comment quite a bit, and one of the things that they did hear was that there's some concern with our code as it was written. We haven't implemented our code ever. It's a new code. So the planning board, trying to be responsive to the things we've heard, has dived into our code a little bit more, and where they're at right now is they'd like to review the neighborhood mixed use code again, potentially have like an architect or an engineering firm sketch out something that would be similar to what we're really talking about, so people could get a feel for really where we're going and what it would look like, and probably tweak the code a little so that it's going to meet the sketch, and so that our code is actually going to do what we're hoping that it would do. So they've been reviewing a couple codes from the surrounding, well, one of them's from Washington, but one of them's from Western New York. And we're probably going to call a public hearing for more input on the changes to the code. And then we would wrap together changes to the code along with this rezone request and package it up to the town board. Hopefully people would have a better understanding of everything that was going on and making sure that the code is tight enough that it's going to hopefully create something we'd want to see in the future. I know we did hear a lot of cart before the horse, like, why are we doing this now? It is really important from a planning perspective to do this now. If you have a proposal in front of you, you don't have the flexibility to try and figure out what would be right for the town. You're really constrained then by what you have in the books. So if we wait to see what somebody comes up with, then we're not able to dictate what is probably for the greater good of the town. So we really think that it's important to at least be looking at it and moving it forward. There's a potential that ODHEC will never sell.
Right.
I mean, it could just stay like that forever. But we would want to be out there to make sure that the underlying zoning is going to be closer to what we need to see, what we think has, been identified in the comprehensive plan, what the town board has reviewed, what we've heard from the people, find the consensus there, and then move that zoning forward just in case. It could be a master planning exercise. Mr. Scrubby-Tennis likes to say that a lot, but that's good for the town too. So that's where we're at with the review, and it's still probably going to be a couple months away from you guys, but I know you hear about it. So if you have any questions, fire away.
Sure. So when you talk about mixed use, does that include light industrial?
No.
Okay.
It's a very light list. It could use some refining because I'm not sure how the gas stations got in there, although I was the planner for that, so I can't blame anybody else. But it's things like banks, it's things like small restaurants, it's things like hair salons. I know we heard from someone saying we don't have a lot of law offices. Maybe you could put some law offices in there. Dentists, just small, not large traffic generators that would fit and they would meet people's needs, and it would be like the stores. If you were to live in a mixed use development, it'd be the stores that you'd want to walk to. It's not going to be like a Target. It's not going to be like a manufacturing plant. It's not those kind of things.
So we would rezone the 43,000 acres, even though it's very unlikely that we would have access to 43,000 acres. Do you have an aerial shot? Because I went over there today, so I have a better feel for this than I think we were. So yeah, go back to that.
Yeah, that's the closest thing. I mean,
So you don't have the aerial shot that has Balltown, Consol, the Wetlands, because that's what I have. So,
This is all, I
Mm.
don't know if
So-
it's actually gonna reach, but consoles on the top there, the wetlands or this green thing?
yep,
These are all wetlands here. So they take a whole chunk of this parcel.
okay. So right now, there's about 500 people, it looks to me, that at least 500, 600 cars in there. Oh, it is still definitely ODHEC. ODHEC building so it's still definitely that. And we don't really have any indication that they are moving out. I mean, there's Special Olympics is there. So my understanding is what we're really talking about, what we would ultimately have access to, while we would rezone the whole thing, what we would ultimately have access to redevelop is, if we're coming in from Balltown Road, there's a softball field, right? All right, on your immediate left-hand side, the softball field.
Mhm.
Like,
Down at the
I
top.
have a different picture, so.
Yeah,
And when I was over there today, I took some pictures and sent them to some folks. Then there's the wetlands. They, as you pointed out, are federally protected wetlands. Nobody is going to, pour concrete in that pond. And that's pretty much it, to the corner of, from the back of, I'll still call it Radio Shack, even though I know it's Benjamin Moore now, to the corner of Consol, right, is pretty much a softball field, closest to Balltown, a softball field, and then the pond and the wetlands.
mhm, yeah.
Across from the pond and the wetlands are 4 empty buildings. I believe their numbers are 5, 6, 7, 8, or 5, 6, 7, and 8. And those are the empty buildings. So that's really pretty much what we're talking about. We're not talking about Pooh's Corner and kicking out the daycare.
Mhm.
All those state workers with those cars who come and spend money in our town, they're not being kicked out. We're really looking at, while we'd rezone the whole thing and the state would let us do that, that's really what's empty and that's really what's available, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't feel like we're all talking about the same things. I think everybody thinks we're going to get that pool, which nothing would make me happier. And we're going to get all that ground, but we're not getting all of that. In the best case scenario, all of that really isn't going to be released by the state, because they're not going to move out those 500 people who work in all those buildings. And
Yeah, we've had that conversation at the planning board level multiple times. I mean, you definitely want to make sure that the zoning is consistent across the parcel.
Mhm.
But the question has come up multiple times, like, if we're only getting a portion of it, like, do they still have to meet all the standards of the neighborhood mixed-use development? And the answer has been definitely yes. So you couldn't take those 4 buildings that are vacant and only put the commercial there and say, well, we're going to put the residential later if the state ever.
you couldn't
couldn't do
zone
that.
by chunk, right?
Right,
You would have to,
exactly. So
exactly.
You're
Okay.
going to have to make the neighborhood mixed use work in whatever chunk you get. If it's a chunk, if you get the whole thing, great, then you can plan the whole thing. If
Right.
you get a chunk, then the chunk will have to work, and it'll have to work with the surroundings. And if it's left with all of the existing buildings that work there, that's fine. You want something that's going to be compatible with actually all of the surrounding zoning. So
Great. I just think that folks think we're talking about a lot more than we are,
Mhm.
even though we have to rezone the whole thing, or the planning board would give us a recommendation. Maybe they'll say they don't want to rezone the whole thing, but we're really just talking about a pond we can't touch,
Yeah.
a softball field, and 4 empty buildings, and a road, and not even the parking that goes to the pool, and none of the parking and any of that. So, right.
Yeah.
So it's not a big scary project.
No.
I mean, there's not an opportunity to put 1,000 houses in there. There's already 500 cars coming in already. So I don't think any of that would really change.
yeah, and it's not going to be, I mean, especially if the state divides it and only surpluses some of it, really not really compatible with R1. And Leslie's brought this up multiple times, like, you don't know what the demolitions costs are. If the zoning isn't compatible with what is actually economically feasible to go there, you may end up with a use variance, and then you may end up with something that you really don't want to see. So you really treat it as a whole,
Yep.
but with the understanding that it could go piecemeal or it could never go. And make sure that those things are going to be compatible uses. And I know that there's concern that there wouldn't be public space and that green space would be taken away from people. But the intent of the code is really to make a multi-use path down Balltown Road so that everybody who walks there, and there's a lot of people that walk there right now, would actually have a safe place to walk. And maybe maybe just leave the wetlands untouched, or maybe put a boardwalk through there. I mean, I think enhance it, make the public space, more accessible, and maybe turn a place that's vacant right now into something that could be, a different amenity that we really don't have in the town of Niskuna.
Sure, absolutely.
You mentioned that there's going to be multi-family dwellings in the mixed use.
Mhm.
How
can
dense can that be? Can it be a big apartment building? Can it be an apartment building with 100 apartments, so to speak, or is there any limit on that?
There's a requirement that there's 2 types of housing, and it can be up to 65%. But it is not so prescriptive of a code that it's going to limit the size of the building. And that is something the planning board has asked, like, can we actually set a maximum size on the commercial and maybe set a maximum size on the apartment buildings? That's certainly something we could look at. It's not written into our code right now. Right now, that would be the discretion of the planning board. So you could have large apartment buildings.
So Laura, you said by doing this preemptively, this type of zoning actually gives you more flexibility.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
A lot more.
By waiting till if the state decided they wanted to leave all of a sudden, and then you've got this property that's only zoned for R1, then you're kind of stuck with that. Is that right?
You're stuck with it. A developer could take forward a plan that involves a zone change, but it's never, planning wise, implementation wise, it's never good if a developer is taking forward the zone change, because then the zoning doesn't work. They're like, okay, let's do this and put the zone change in. I mean, we've actually seen that. You guys have seen that. It's not a popular thing. It doesn't have like the proper time to really be vetted and taken all the public comment that you can. You really want to get out in front of it and make sure that it's something that we've looked at, with Complete Streets. We've looked at it with Tree Council. We've looked at it at the town board. We've had, we'll probably end up having 3 public hearings. Maybe we could even do like an invitation to the public to come and look at the drawings and see what they think would be great there. Once a developer submits a plan, you couldn't change the zoning and be like, no, that's not what we want to see. We want to see this. You can't at that point. You could open yourself up for a lot of litigation, and you're not going to win that one.
And by doing it now, it allows you to get a lot more input from the public.
Mhm. You set the stage. That's the actual point of zoning, although sometimes it works backwards, but you're looking at the town as a whole. That's why the town board has the right to look at the zoning as a whole and figure out what is right there.
Laura, is there asbestos in those 4 buildings?
I don't know that for sure, but I think there is.
Okay, so, if there is, does that make the property a lot less attractive to developers?
Well, it's certainly going to add to the upfront costs, which, any upfront cost to the developer gets passed on through the development. So it changes the economics, and it'll change what they can and can't do, and what, typically, like if it was going to be developed by R2 and it cost them $500,000 to take down those buildings, and they had, 20 lots, they would just divide $500,000 by 20 and add that into the cost of redevelopment. But if it gets too high, you can't do that anymore. And then you start looking at what is viable on that project and what are you going to end up with. If it becomes private property, there is a right to develop. So,
Have any developers expressed any interest to you in this project?
no.
No, because they haven't to me either. I've read that they have, but they haven't. So no developers banging down your door saying they want to. No, I didn't think so. Thank you for clarifying that.
Do you anticipate that discussions are going to continue for the next few months?
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
public will have ample opportunity to submit their questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, definitely.
Would the best place to do that be at the planning board level?
Yeah, we held one public hearing. We will call another one because we are making changes. But we're entertaining it under privilege of the floor, just like you guys do. And every meeting since we had our public hearing, we've had privilege of the floor comment, and we're quite used to that. So anybody's welcome to come to privilege of the floor. They can also always email. I send all emails on. Sometimes people are a little bit nervous to come to the meetings. They can just write me any of their thoughts, and I forward them to the town board and the planning board as long as they're okay with that. So, and if they're not okay with that, then I will just gently pack up what they're saying and pass it on without any name.
This is nothing new, as you mentioned before. I know we've talked about it in my committee probably 2 years ago, maybe even before that. was when we were going through the comprehensive plan and we were looking at the parcels that are still out there and making sure that everything fits into the comprehensive plan and what the town planner is supposed to do, right? Come up with the plan. So I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention and trying to get out in front of it so we can get the input from the community, from the neighborhoods that surround it, from the people that want to visit it, and put a good plan in place.
Yeah, it actually, I mean, so Kathy Matern actually wrote the original neighborhood mixed use code and left it for me. It just took me a long time to get around to it, but it literally was Laura looking at a list of things that I need to do on my desk and be like, okay, I know we need to do this. Let's move it forward. He helped. Anything else? Okay, so I'm going to hijack the presentation and just pop up another slide.
That'll be a lot more interesting to a lot of people in the room.
Well, they don't like the planning stuff.
Mm.
So just real quickly, I am very proud of my assistant town planner for the great job that he did presenting the River Road Park upgrades to you. You may not all know he did not sit in a single River Road Park upgrade meeting. That was a 20-minute, please do this for me, Jeff, because I am in Cape Cod. And I think he did a great job, and I appreciate that some of you thanked him for that. We were able to have a couple meetings, and I'm just trying to, we've changed some of the money around. I don't know, Yasmin, do you want to dive in and I'll get the slides up?
Sure. So one of the main changes to the bonding proposal that we're going to be considering tonight was the additional $50,000 that has been added for parking and paths upgrades. So we're going to consider that a two-part project for improvements to parking and paths. That will be phase one. It will also be phase one of the general River Road Park improvement portion.
Yeah, so the Philstack grant stays exactly the same. Field 1's Field 2 upgrade in the Park Pavilion. But the bonding goes up $50,000, and we added in some of those concerns that we heard from you guys at the last meeting. And the phase 2 and phase 3, we added the lighting to phase 2, and phase 3 actually stays the same. So we're hoping that we could incorporate the additional parking up front that you guys were concerned about. And Denise brought up Complete Streets, Safe Routes have been looking at those paths forever. And it would be a huge win for them if we could incorporate them early on. And it would really encourage people to walk and bike to school, which is healthy and great. And it would be, I think, a very good public benefit to put that up front as well. Did anybody have any questions on those changes?
I'd just like to thank you for addressing those concerns that I raised last week about the parking. And I'm very pleased that now we can have the parking addressed at the same time that the improvements are being made. I think this will be a more seamless approach and a better way to do things. So thank you for very quickly turning that around.
Yeah, I mean, Denise and Yasmin pulled the meetings together, and we had to make sure that all the department heads were on board, which is hard. But I think we did it.
So thank you. Thank you all for being very responsive in a quick time frame. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, and up next, we have an additional presentation that's going to be made by Matt Yetto. He's going to briefly discuss some of the changes that are going on at the wastewater treatment plant and some new initiatives that we'll be considering this evening.
Yeah, that's good. So specifically, I'd like to talk about the resolution that's on for tonight, addressing the approval to enter into a contract to accept liquid organic waste at our sewer treatment plant. As part of the upgrade project that we're in year 3 of right now, we're utilizing excess capacity in our sludge digesters to accept organic waste that can be used to generate electricity and fuel for the treatment practices at the plant. It's to offset the cost of running the plant and to reduce the overall impact on the tax base. This specific contract that we're looking at for tonight would allow us to accept liquid waste from the Pepsi crush facility in Latham. As part of the Pepsi bottling process, excess soda, expired soda, tea, other beverages that they produce, when they are no longer able to sell, they crush the bottles. That liquid is high in sugars, which is good fuel for our the methane-producing bacteria that exists in our digesters. Entering that into our digesters helps to speed along the process. It generates electricity from the methane that we will burn in a on-site generator, and then excess gas will also be used to heat the sludge, which helps to continue the process. The contract tonight is just for Pepsi, so it's no more than one truck per day. The waste is delivered by tank truck, maximum of 5,000 gallons. The hours that they would be operating are between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And Pepsi would have to work with the town to do things that would best work for our operations. They're in the process of getting their truck finalized, which would best suit our plant, and our staff are trained, and ESG agents here from ESG tonight. They've been a vital partner in this whole process. They've advised us and they've helped us, and they will be here as we start this whole project going forward to aid and to assist us with the operation. Any questions?
So if any of this changed, what would happen? Would we have to have an additional contract that then would be vetted and discussed and voted on separately?
If we wanted to accept additional material
Yes.
from other sources,
Yes.
each contractor would have to come in front of the board independently. And we'd also look at the effect on the plant and move forward at that time or deny it based on conditions. But right now, it could be up to 5 a week, but we may only get one a day, or we'll get one a day, maybe only one a week. It depends as Pepsi ramps up their crushing facility. So it's a good soft start and get all of our stuff up and going. So we won't be getting 5 trucks in 1 week, most likely to start.
So what would be if it was running at full capacity with Pepsi, how many trucks a day do you think? One truck a
One
day
truck per day.
at full capacity?
At full capacity of Pepsi.
Okay.
And then we also get a tipping fee on top of that too. So we're benefiting with electricity. It's moving towards our net zero goal for the plant. So it's energy efficient. It's a green technology. That's our goal.
What does net zero mean for folks who don't come to all these meetings?
We produce all the energy we need on site rather than pulling it off the grid. And one of the most costly operations, the biggest cost in any water or wastewater treatment plant is electricity because of all the pumping and all the machinery. So it's a huge savings to the town.
So you mentioned this Pepsi and the sugar water. That's an example of organic waste, and that's primarily what we are talking about here. We're not talking about fuels and fluid, some sort of chemical fluids.
No, it's basically sugar water.
Mhm.
And one of the other benefits of this operation is it properly disposes of the sugar water in an environmentally friendly way without destroying the town or city's infrastructure, right?
Yes,
Because it's going
it's-
directly into the plant and not through all the pipes that it would go through without this system.
Yeah, it directly enters the digesters rather than going through the wet side of the plant where you wouldn't really want to add that. You wouldn't even be getting the full energy out of it that way either.
Can you mention again the size of the truck that Pepsi's looking at purchasing?
5,000 gallons.
And that's what, compared to the other trucks that you have, maybe the vac truck or things like that, your normal trucks that operate around town, what's the size of that, comparatively speaking?
It's no larger than our vac truck.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Matt, at other meetings, people had talked about, oh, why can't we pipe this or have this come from some other place? And when we met with Pepsi, that was told to us that the sugar water actually biodegrades and it's longer transfer. Is that correct? When pipes and that, and it's not as useful and doesn't work as well?
Yeah, the bacteria that you're using is naturally occurring. So if you feed it, it will degrade the product. So if you directly feed it in rather than have a long waiting time, you're not wasting that energy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to privilege of the floor. Privilege of the floor is now open. If anyone would like to speak, you can approach the dais, state your name and address for the record.
Amy Hawansky, 2833 Wittmeyer Drive. 2 topics today. I am a member of the Niskayuna Tree Council, and as you continue the discussions and the planning for the upgrades to the River Road Park behind Mario's Restaurant, I strongly encourage you to keep a specific line item for specifically planting trees. Now, I saw in phase 3 that you've added in a line for landscaping, and I hope that specifically planting trees are mentioned. I've been told that the trees would be covered kind of by the general fund for improvement, but when we get a non-specific arrangement like that, we end up sometimes using that money for other landscaping items, like, say, gravel. This I know because I am in the trade and I see it happen all the time. So I've also been told that there are a lot of trees already in that park, and that's a quote. Throughout Niskayuna, we are having issues now with older trees. You all know because we've been having issues with the silver maples that are dying from old age. We see this in the over by Hill Street, Hill School Elementary and Upper Union Street. We are also in town losing ash trees to emerald ash borer, and the DEC has already come in and cut down several in a preemptive, attempt to stop the spread of that insect. In urban horticulture management, and that's what this is called, urban horticulture management, we must always be adding new young trees so that we have an ongoing succession of young trees into mature trees. When we don't have that succession, we get an issue where big trees continue to mature and then die, and then they leave a hole behind in the urban canopy. So those trees, based on some of the things that we're looking for the River Road Park, like increased lighting for night games and loudspeakers for announcements, the trees will also help to absorb the sound from those ball fields, and they will also help to block the light from the proposed night lighting systems. So the trees will actually be beneficial to the communities that live around that park. The Tree Council is aware of the project and is available to help select trees appropriate for the site. Trees that would move us past previous selections of just maples and oaks and will help to expand the diversity of the trees in the town. And it's important, we're looking at that on the Tree Council, it's very important to have diversity of trees, because if a certain insect or disease comes in and targets a certain tree, if we have 50% of our canopy as that tree, we could potentially lose 50% of our canopy. And we saw this many years ago with the American elms and the Dutch elm disease, which came and wiped out a whole bunch of elms that were lining city streets. And all of a sudden you have a bare street where you used to have huge 40-foot tall trees. So please continue to keep that as a specific line item in your planning for that park. Thank you. My second topic is that I live on Wittmeyer Drive, which is the access road for the wastewater treatment facility. I am opposed to the contract with Pepsi and the future proposed contracts that might come from other entities to accept out-of-town waste products for a fee at the treatment facility. As I have stated in the past, this project did not go through the normal planning and zoning department process. When the town submitted paperwork to the DEC, there was a question asking if the project was near parkland. The town said it was not, but the facility is surrounded by the Mohawk River State Park. The document also asked if the project would significantly increase traffic in the area, and the town said no. But the company ESG working on this project told us directly that ultimately, in the long term, with the long-term goals of this project, there would be 10 to 12 large tanker trucks per day, which equals 20 to 24 passes as those trucks arrive and depart down our narrow dead-end street. So this is twice on that paperwork that the town indicated information incorrectly. Governmental paperwork twice indicated information incorrectly. Now there's a sign at the intersection of Wittmeyer and River Road, and that indicates that trucks over a certain weight cannot turn from Wittmeyer, turn left onto River Road, and then proceed down Rosendale Road. But these heavy trucks are going to be going up and down Wittmeyer throughout the day, negotiating a 90-degree turn on a road that's not really built for that amount of use. The town board members continue to insist that there is only one truck planned for this project, and that might have been told as one truck for this trial period. However, they have budgeted in the 2019 budget for revenue coming from outside water treatment fees, which mathematically will exceed one truck per day. And after this trial period, as was explained to us by ESG themselves, the trucks will increase to up to 12 per day as the town continues to accept contracts from outside sources. Meanwhile, Wittmeyer residents have requested information about linking into the sewer because, ironically, none of us are even benefiting from the wastewater treatment facility because we're not even hooked up to the sewer. So we're not even benefiting from it. We received an estimate from the town attorney, Mr. Briggs, but it lacked 2 residents, Mr. Briggs, and so was not an accurate estimate. Bless you. 3 of us have emailed or spoken directly to you, Mr. Briggs, to get the correct information, but we are still waiting for that. We have not received that information yet. It is interesting to me that earlier tonight, all of the town board members and the town attorney and the supervisor were all at a meeting with residents of Dean Street to discuss the residents' concerns about cars and trucks speeding down their street and possibly exceeding weight limits. However, after many requests for information, when the town finally agreed to a meeting to discuss the wastewater treatment facility with the residents from our street, not a single member of the town board nor the supervisor attended that meeting. Imagine how that appears to us. It was at that meeting when the company representatives confirmed the total number of trucks planned ultimately for this project and confirmed that the Pepsi waste product is not just leftover drinkable soda that you're going to swallow, but is a highly concentrated acid byproduct which is concentrated down left over from soda. So it's not soda you're going to drink. It is also interesting that the planning board is working on changing zoning for the OD Heck property, but that the use of this wastewater treatment facility to earn money as a commercial entity in a rural residential zone did not go through the planning or zoning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Privilege of the floor is still open if anyone else would like to speak.
Kathy Longi, 2873 Wittmeyer Drive, lived there for 30 years. 33 years ago, my husband and I chose a building lot on Wittmeyer Drive to build our dream home. It was a beautiful spot on a small country-type road surrounded by a nature preserve, peace and tranquility. My husband used to say, utopia. It was my dream come true. Now it's a living nightmare. And so I ask you this one question. Before you vote, to examine your conscience and ask yourself this question. If your son or daughter or your grandchildren were residents of Wittmeyer Drive, would you still vote yes? Would you be willing to trade the quality of their life, their health, and their well-being for money? Because that's what you're doing to us.
Thank you. Privilege of the floor is still open.
Good evening. My name is Nick Chiesa, Chiesa, and I reside at 126 DeWitt Avenue in Schenectady. I would briefly like to discuss the issue of the zoning change application at 500 Balltown Road, also known as the Odie Heck site. I live across the street from Odie Heck. I bought a house 28 years ago, knowing full well that it was single-family, owner-occupied residential neighborhood, and that the Odie Heck campus was also zoned R2 residential at that time. When I bought my house in 1991, Odie Heck was surrounded by R1 residential to the north, R2 residential to the east, single-family residential to the west. The only commercial zoning was commercial shopping to the south of Odie Heck site, which is now occupied by Raymore and Flanagan and the Mohawk Common Plazas. In the mid-1990s, while the Mohawk Mall was being demolished, a piece of the R1 vacant land just north of the wetlands at the corner of Balltown and Console Roads was rezoned to a commercial neighborhood CN district for the Hannaford-Niskayuna Plaza. They pushed back some of the wetlands to create this. This town board has an application pending to change the R2 Odie Heck zoning to a neighborhood mixed-use NMU district. One of the arguments was to be proactive and control the zoning if and when New York State decides to sell the Odie Heck property. Along with others at a public hearing last month, I voiced my concern regarding this change. It would create a commercial district that goes from State Street all along Balltown Road to Council Road. It would change the remaining residential neighborhood into business areas and create more traffic. I strongly believe the definition of mixed use needs to be better defined. It tries to combine a residential district with a small business retail district in order to create a pedestrian-friendly area. However, the current definition allows gas stations and drive-through fast food restaurants. Allowing more cars does not lend itself to a pedestrian and bicycle-friendly neighborhood. There should be no gas stations and no drive-through businesses of any kind. There should be a limit on business hours so there aren't any 24-hour stores. There should be no hotels or apartments, car washes allowed in this mixed-use district. Apartments are businesses, not residential. There should be better consideration for parking and the impact this district will have on the current surrounding residential communities, as well as the impact it will have on the wetlands and the impact on the South Colony School District that the Odie Heck property is in if you have cluster housing. Traffic impact must also be considered, especially along the already overcrowded Balltown Road. I would like the town board to consider 3 zoning areas for the Odie Heck property. One is to protect the wetlands by creating a land conservation LC district to forever protect this vital green space. The state is currently not using this area and could immediately sell it to the town for $1 and create a passive open space park. The other 2 zoning districts could be residential in the middle and mixed use on the east end of the Odie Heck property using existing roadways. With the exception of a park, a library, and a bookstore, I currently have access to everything I possibly would need within a half mile from my house for me and other fellow neighbors to age in place. If you truly want to make this area pedestrian and bicycle friendly, I implore the town to create a sidewalk on either side of Balltown Road with a curb. This would allow me and others to get to the current plethora of stores at Niskayuna Plaza, Mohawk Commons, and Mansion Square without using my car to cross Balltown Road. All the other town comprehensive plans calls for the Odie Heck site to remain a residential R2 district. It was only in the last comprehensive plan dated 2013, which was approved just 3 years ago in 2015, that it mentioned a mixed-use district for OD Heck. This mixed-use district wasn't even defined until just 2 years ago in 2017. In closing, I would like to publicly thank the members of the planning board for their time in discussing some of my major concerns regarding the rezoning of the OD Heck site. Since the OD Heck property is not currently for sale, I asked Supervisor Syed and this town board not to rush into rezoning the site. I asked that you work with the planning board to get the neighborhood mixed-use zoning clearly defined. Eliminate uses in the code that is not pedestrian or bicycle friendly, such as gas stations and other drive-through establishments. I ask you to protect the wetlands by creating a land conservation LC district for it. Lastly, I'm certainly not against any municipality increasing its tax base as long as it's done in a thoughtful and responsible way. However, this mixed-use district needs to be better defined so that it isn't an anything-goes district. A limit on cars and traffic is what we need. Let us do it right so any developer can. Let's do it right so any developer can't manipulate the mixed-use MU zoning to have businesses that were never intended to be residential, to be in a residential small retail district. I would be willing to volunteer to be on any committee to assist in the furtherance of that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Kevin Walsh, 2843 Wittmeyer Drive. And I'm the chairman of the Town Niskuna Planning Board. I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here as a 24-year resident of Wittmeyer Drive. This isn't, it's about agenda item number 23, of course, the organics. And my concern isn't, with the trial contract, it's what happens after the trial contract. In the 2019 adopted budget, there was a $208,000 line item for a revenue for the plant. And I have to assume that the $208,000 was for tipping fees to be generated. So tipping fees and contract, which I appreciate, full disclosure and having the availability of the contract available on the web at 4 cents a gallon. So my concern is after the initial 3 months, after, Mr. Delarado, your question earlier about, what's at full capacity? Well, one per day during the trial contract, okay? But in order to make up that $208,000 that's been projected in the budget as revenue, if that is the tipping fees, after the 3-month period, if it's positive results and things are okay and it's a go forward with more organics at 4 cents a gallon, the balance of the 7 months of the year that would require, we require 7 trucks per day or 14 trips down the street because it's a one-way street in order to come up with the $208,000. So I just ask you to think about that. It's more than just the trial period, 1 truck a day. It's what happens after that. Now, luckily, the budget, as you all know, the preliminary budget was $350,000 and it was reduced to $208,000. So you can pretty quickly do the numbers for $350,000. If that stayed in the budget, it would be more like on the order of 11 trucks per day or 22 trips down the street at 4 cents a gallon in order to generate that revenue that was projected. So please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Privilege of the floor is still open if anyone would like to speak. And last call, if you would like to speak during privilege of the floor, do so now. Okay, seeing no one left to speak during privilege of the floor, I'm now closing it. We're going to move on to our public hearings. We have 5 of them. So public hearings work very similarly to privilege of the floor. If you would like to comment on any one of these public hearings, you can approach the dais, state your name and address for the record. So I'm going to have the town clerk call the first public hearing.
A public hearing to consider the issuance of bonds relating to the increase and improvement of the facilities of Sewer District Number 1, being sanitary sewer main reconstruction and the installation of sewer main slip lining, including original furnishings, equipment, machinery, apparatus, appurtenances, and incidental expenses in connection therewith at a maximum estimated cost of $75,000.
Thank you. First public hearing is open. If anyone would like to speak, make any comments. Last call on the first public hearing. If you'd like to speak or make any comments, do so now. Okay, I'm going to close the first public hearing. I'm going to have the clerk call the second public hearing.
Public hearing to consider the issuance of bonds relating to the joint increase and improvement of the facilities of Sewer District Number 1 and Sewer District Number 6, being the cost of a backhoe, including incidental equipment and expenses in connection therewith at a maximum estimated cost to said districts of $62,500.
Thank you. The second public hearing is now open. If you would like to make any comments during the second public hearing, do so now. Seeing no one wanting to make any comments, I'm going to close the second public hearing. I'm going to have the clerk call the third public hearing.
A public hearing to consider the issuance of bonds relating to the increase and improvement of the facilities of the Consolidated Water District Number 1, being the Water District's share of the cost of the purchase of a backhoe, including incidental equipment and expenses in connection therewith, at an aggregate maximum estimated cost of $62,500.
Thank you. The third public hearing is now open. If you would like to make any comments or speak during the third public hearing, do so now. Last call on the third public hearing. If you would like to make any comments, you can do so now. Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to close the third public hearing and I have the clerk call for the fourth public hearing.
A public hearing to consider the issuance of bonds relating to the increase and improvement of the facilities of Consolidated Water District Number 1, being the reconstruction of water mains, including original furnishings, equipment, machinery, apparatus, appurtenances, and incidental expenses in connection therewith, at a maximum estimated cost of $500,000.
Thank you. The fourth public hearing is now open. If you would like to make any comments, you can do so now. Last call on the fourth public hearing. If you'd like to make any comments, you can do so now. Seeing no one wanting to make any comments, I'm going to close the fourth public hearing. I'm going to have the town clerk call the last public hearing.
A public hearing to consider the issuance of bonds relating to the increase and improvement of the facilities of Sewer District Number 6, being the sewer force main replacement, including original furnishings, equipment, machinery, apparatus, appurtenances, and incidental expenses in connection therewith, at a maximum estimated cost of $240,000.
Thank you. Fifth public hearing is now open. If you would like to make any comments, you can do so now. Last call on the fifth public hearing. If you'd like to make any comments, you can do so now. Okay, seeing no one wishing to make any comments, I'm going to close the last public hearing. We're now going to move on to committee reports. We're going to begin with Councilwoman Weber.
Thank you. We've had a busy February in community programs and a bunch of things coming up for March. In February, our high school ski club finished up a successful program for Friday night skiing. We had a full week of February camps during the school break last week. We had Harry Potter camp, Red Cross babysitting class, and a tubing trip. We're running another tubing trip to West Mountain this Friday, March 1st, and it's already full. That's an evening trip from 5 to 10. They fill up quick. That's a middle school and fifth grade trip. And our staff is busy at work planning our spring and summer programming, and that information will be available by April 1st. I would like to especially thank the Niskayuna Moms Group for visiting us at the Senior Center on Valentine's Day, bringing Valentines and cheer to everybody. It's always great to have multiple generations interacting at our recreation center. We have a big announcement. We have Ballotone coming to Niskayuna Town Hall, very popular new exercise trend. And it's coming for a session starting in March. There are flyers in the lobby. There is some space available in that class, probably some limited openings because it's filling up quite fast. In March, we have our Care Fair coming to Town Hall. This is run through our senior center. And this is for people who are either looking to help support aging family members or looking for some home care or assisted living themselves. There'll be local organizations here offering, home care services or senior living residential services or specialized nonprofits who can be of assistance. And they'll all be here in one place on Saturday, March 9th, right here in the boardroom from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. There'll be some lectures and just the opportunity to do some one-stop shopping. It'll be a great program. Let's see, we also have some other trips coming up through the senior center. We have, a trip to the Schenectady Playhouse to see Agatha Christie's, and then there were none on March 24th. And it's 518-372-4969 to get more information or reserve your spot for any of the programs offered through our senior adult programming. Our next community programs meeting is Tuesday, March 5th at 3 p.m. here in the Schaefer Room. And for our senior advisory committee meetings, we're doing something a little bit different this year. I'm going to be meeting with people for coffee at the senior center every other month instead of doing a formal committee meeting. I'll be there March 21st at 11:30, and then we can all just gather around a table, and anybody who wants to ask questions or provide feedback or simply get an update about town issues can just come, and we'll have an open conversation around the table. Okay, that's the community programs report for February. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. Tomorrow morning, we are meeting to discuss the farm market, a special community programs meeting tomorrow, 8:00. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, no, thank you for reminding everyone. We're now going to move on to Councilman Delarada.
Thank you, Supervisor. As you know, I chair the Economic Development and Historical Preservation Committee. I was unable to do so on February 1st, so I would like to thank Councilwoman McGraw for chairing that. That was a great help for me in my absence. There is fortunately, the town department heads are continuing to work hard, making your tax dollars count here in this unit. And one way that we do that is through applying for grants. We have submitted for a bike rodeo and a pop-up event on Grand Boulevard this year. That's in conjunction with Schenectady County. We did something similar here in the town hall this past summer. It went very well. We're also submitting an application to DEC to combat invasive species that are impacting the very important recreational areas of our town, including our town parks, Leisure Nature Preserve, Aqueduct Park, and the Lock 7 boat launch. So hopefully these will be successful and bring improvements to those areas. The planning board recently finalized site plan for approval for Jackson Demolition to move into 397 Anthony Street. And there also, as you know, the planning board has received a lot of input from the town residents regarding the potential rezone of the state-owned OD Heck parcel. And they are examining what potential developments could look like there, as well as what code changes may be a good idea to go forward with if that ever does happen. There is a batteries and bulb store that's moving in adjacent to Blaze Pizza we would like to welcome. And the Tree Council has set a date for Arbor Day 2019 for Saturday, April 27th. That will be held at Blacknick Park. It's very exciting. We're working with the Highway Department on the potential to get partial reimbursement for plantings on Ray Street under the 10,000 Trees and Growing program that is offered by National Grid. I do want to thank the Tree Council as well as Ms. Holansky for her great efforts in that. It's very important. And also the comments that were made to the River Road Park. That is a very good idea, and I'm sure we're going to be looking into trees and retraining that area as well. Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you. Councilwoman McGraw.
Thank you, Supervisor. For those of you who do not know, I chair both the Highways and Public Facilities Committee and also the Public Works Committee. So anything that has to do with our roads, anything that has to do with our parks and those kinds of things, as well as our water and sewer. It's been obviously a very busy time. I don't think I need to tell anybody the weather has not really cooperated around here, but since November, our trucks for the highway department have been out 15 times sanding, 11 times plowing. That is far above average. When you add in the cold, it's just really been a tough go of it. When the snow finally came and winter finally came, we were really, we've had our work cut out for us. In addition to that, I think anybody just needed to drive around for the last couple of days, see that in addition to the plowing and the sanding, we're picking up branches and trees and things like that. So it's definitely been a very busy time. Over on the water and sewer side of it, the wastewater treatment plant is nearing its completion. We're very excited about that. The old water and sewer garage that's in the middle of Blatnick Park, I'm not sure whoever thought that a water and sewer garage should go in the middle of a beautiful park like that. We're nearing the point where that will be taken down. Getting the asbestos out, doing all those things, and that will be gone. That'll be especially nice because the equipment's starting to come in, and as soon as that ground thaws, we are moving ahead with our splash pad. And I know a lot of people are very excited. The splash pad that'll be over there in Blatnick Park and will really look just a lot nicer. I think a splash pad as opposed to an old tin garage will just really be more in the character of our community. I want to thank Gary Blake, who's I think still sitting around here. He's a new employee. He's going to, we hope, go on staff tonight. Thank you, Gary, for joining us. And those are those kind of things. In addition to plowing and sanding and picking up trees and sticks, we had an extra thing that the highway department had to go worry about, and all of us had to go worry about. If you live over in the Avon Crest neighborhood, if you drive up and down Route 7, you may have seen that one of the most iconic images in our community, the Avon Crest wall and the lions. Well, someone crashed into that and knocked down the wall. So we've got another project on our hands right now. So we're moving along with trying to get estimates and get that going as quickly as we possibly can. It was mentioned earlier, yesterday I arranged an old-fashioned field trip because I love them. And we, all five of us, the town attorney, the town comptroller, we went over to the Pepsi plant that we've heard so much about tonight. And what we did was look at what is called crushing. It is literally where they will crush cans of Pepsi or Diet Pepsi. It will go into a tank, it will go into a truck, and it will come over here. And that's really, that's all we saw. But that is what's happening at that Pepsi plant. There was some talk of math right now and how we balance budgets and things like that. This initial contract that we are going to have with Pepsi to take the crushed soda is 4 cents a gallon. However, that's kind of like the bargain rate, the initial rate. When Yasmin and I and the town board were negotiating the budget, we knew full well that this first contract is 4 cents, but other contracts will probably be in the area of 7 to 10 cents a gallon, and more likely around 12 cents is the out end of it. I remember from our initial conversations. So at a bare minimum, we're probably looking at contracts that'll be about twice what this initial contract is, which then leads us to fewer trips, which leads us to smaller, so all of those things that we really are, which really is our goal for this. We want to be net zero. We want to be a plant that's a good stewards of the community and the environment. And this is an important component of it. Softball. So Heidi just left. So softball. I'm very pleased. I think we really got there on this. I want to thank David Upkarian. We went, Sarah Belofsky, who is not here. We had just a series of meetings to try to be able to get this softball project to a point where it really worked for everyone. I want to thank Lisa Weber, who was a tireless advocate for not only the project, but for everything else that goes around the softball fields. She was the one who was really pushing us on the parking and pushing us on the paths. I want to thank the supervisor for willing to entertain one more meeting of this at 4 o'clock yesterday, where we said we've got to add just a few more dollars to this to make it work and have parking and get started on parking phase one of part, whatever we want to call it, but the parking and the paths to, in addition to getting our fields out from under way too much water that for kids that I really like an awful lot. Within what we're going to do tonight, in addition to our very exciting softball project, we're going to do some other upgrades to parks and things that I'm very excited about. Nothing more than softball, but I'm very excited about. We're going to do some upgrades to the dog park. It's long overdue, much smaller project compared to softball, but just it really needs some upgrades and some love over there. So we're going to be able to do that with what we're doing this evening. So I thank the supervisor for her willingness to work with me on that. We're also, you hear a lot about bathrooms lately around here, whether it's at softball, over down by the river, and we're going to add another, what we always thought was the project around taking down that water and sewer garage and upgrading our transfer station. They need a bathroom over there, a bathroom and a pavilion that we could probably use for a lot more than just the transfer station. We'll be able to use for our disc golf area, for the dog park, for the splash pad. So we get excited about the little things around here, and it's bathrooms this week. I am thrilled to see that Paul Webster, who has just been a dynamic member of kind of the team in Niskayuna, will continue to serve as our Metroplex representative, because obviously you see that we do so very much with them. And I did go over to Odihek today. I do have a really good feel for exactly what it looks like, how many cars are there, you know, each and every day, what's full, what's not full. I encourage others to go over there. I think if you just pull in and you can kind of drive around and you can see, it's a quiet, sleepy little place, but it's sort of a dynamic place. There's a lot of people who work over there. So I'm not really sure anything that we would be doing would be changing the character of in terms of how many people are just physically over there each day. And I think that is it. Thank you, Supervisor.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilman McPartlin.
Thank you, Supervisor. I chair the Police and Public Safety Committee. We met on February 5th. As usual, we discussed operational issues. Tonight, you're going to see a resolution for the maintenance bid for the police vehicles that the Chief and Deputy Chief put out. We have a successful bidder for that. Our fleet and equipment, we have 2 police cars on order that will be here probably in May, I would say. It takes a while to get those. Training's always on our agenda. It's always something that our officers in our police department do. We have 2 officers that went to the BAO training, that's breath analysis, and 3 officers that are going to go to crisis negotiation, that's Officer Party, Koshan, and Twitty, and the ones that went to the BOA are Kapaga and Henry. We discussed citizen issues. Dean Street was on our agenda, as it usually is, enforcement on Dean Street, and the discussion of the meeting that we had this evening at 5:30 about Dean Street. Also, we got some resident input on Knott Street between Balltown and Clifton Park Road. When we get these complaints, what we do is we send out our traffic study. So we have devices that will study traffic counts, speed, times of day, that sort of thing. So we'll be doing that for that area. Town code. Winter parking rules, please, no overnight parking on the streets. Got to say it every meeting until the winter's over so that our residents know, no overnight parking. Court issues, parking tickets. The judges have tweaked their operations over there in the court so that now the clerks have some fines for certain parking tickets so that they can now expedite the payment of those for our residents. The fire chief comes to our meetings from District 1. He's doing some alert training in April for his people. Also, the fire district trains bus drivers at the school district for fire extinguishers and other apparatus for them. And personnel, Officer Walter graduated January 6th, is now in our field training program. And that's my report for this evening. Our next meeting is March 5th.
Thank you very
8
much.
a.m.
Thanks. Okay. I'll be brief with my supervisor's report so we can get to all of the business that we have forthcoming. As you saw, we had several public hearings on the agenda. I'm really sad that nobody wanted to speak at any of those public hearings. That's nothing that is going to come up for a vote as a resolution tonight. It will come back for a vote and resolutions at the March Town Board meeting. All of those various equipment and improvements are to our sewer and water districts. These improvements are critical to the maintenance of our infrastructure in the town. And every year, as we put our capital projects plan together, we always look to identify ways that we can improve our water mains, sewer lines, any of that infrastructure. So that's part of that yearly plan that we all get together and talk about. So that has come to fruition from several meetings that we have at Councilwoman McGraw's committee. So, you know, I'm happy with the capital projects plan that we put together this year. I think it'll be for the maximum benefit of our residents. In addition, on tonight's agenda, we will be considering bonding for some equipment purchases, and I'm happy to sponsor that resolution. One item in particular is a tandem dump truck with a plow. This is an essential piece of equipment. It's for sanding and plowing our roads, and in a very difficult winter like we have seen recently, this is a critical piece of equipment to making sure that our roads are safely passable as much as possible. We're also going to be considering bonding for our parks, and I'm happy to say that I will be sponsoring the resolution for the improvements to the River Road Park, and that will also include improvements to the softball fields. So one of our main goals was to fix the longstanding field drainage issues. Ever since I came on board as supervisor, it was something that I heard over and over again. I saw pictures of waterlogged fields, and they just weren't playable. So part of what phase one is going to do is to fix that issue. And there's no reason why our girls can't be playing on safe and dry fields. And I think ultimately those fields are going to be the same caliber of field that we see at Blatnick Park. So I think that'll be a good thing to raise the parity of one park with another. And I do want to make one distinction. The pavilion and the bathroom in the corner, that was not something that was requested by softball. That was something that the town wanted to do to balance the interests of the sports leagues with the interests of all of the residents in the town who frequent that park. By adding another pavilion and bathrooms, we free up the existing pavilion space, which there was a space issue. Those bathrooms there do need improvements. So if we can create brand new, beautiful bathrooms up at the top of the park, those can be used by some of the people that walk those paths up there that are going to be using that brand new, beautiful pavilion. And then hopefully at some point we can go back in and renovate the existing pavilion bathrooms. So it's part of a holistic approach. It's 3 phases. This is phase one. I think phase one is going to accomplish a lot. And it goes without saying, but we really do have to thank Assemblyman Phil Stack for the grant that he awarded the town in the amount of $250,000. Without that, there's absolutely no way that we could be making all the improvements that we're going to be making. So thank you, Assemblyman Stack. And finally, I am excited to once again be a guest on Bob Cudmore's Talk of the Town next week. It is really early in the morning, so I don't expect that any of you will actually listen, but if you happen to be up that early on a Tuesday, tune in, Magic 590. And I will also be attending the annual International Women's Day celebration on March 9th, and that will be hosted by the Tri-City India Association, excuse me. It's something that I attended last year. It was a great cultural event, so I'll be making a return appearance this year, and I'm very excited to have been invited. And that concludes my supervisor's report. We are going to head into the resolutions. We're going to begin with resolution 2019.
Supervisor, I'm going to make the
Sure.
request that we move to 2019-40 for a lot of people in the audience who might want to go home soon or their mothers want to get them home. But now that Mike Rogers is here, we can proceed. So can we?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that one first. I think that's
expected.
why many people came. So we will. We will do 2019-40 first. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution authorizing, subject to permissive referendum, the issuance of bonds to pay for the cost of improvements to various parks.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just like to, I'm very glad you're all here tonight. This was, thanks to all of you. It really, and I want everybody to go home and send Sarah Belofsky a text and say thank you, thank you, thank you, because it really, she was just magnificent through this. So I am so glad that we are moving ahead on this. Someday I'll get a new pool, guys, but until then, I have to be really happy about this. So, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like also to thank Assemblyman Steck for this grant and for really getting the ball rolling here, and to all these wonderful young women in the audience and their families. Thank you for being here and for being part of this process. And these are lessons that you're learning now off the field in the off season on how to recognize a need that you have and you've had for several years for a new playing field, and how to make it happen. So let's give these young ladies a round of applause, please. We're happy that you're here, and we are delighted to be able to bond for this money to make these improvements to your field and to the park in general, and to put this new pavilion in. And we've made some improvements over the past week to get some more parking in and make improvements to the paths. And I am looking forward to seeing you all play as I walk my dogs through that park now. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just briefly, this has been a long time coming. As I don't know if you guys have seen the town parks master plan, but that's something that we put together, and Councilwoman McGraw was very active in putting that together back in 2015. And sure enough, in the 2016 park plan, it talks about fields 2 and 3 not having fence, fields 3 and 4 are too wet, field 4 is too small for varsity. And the trails connecting the parks to the nearby schools need to be improved. So this was a long time coming. I'm very glad that it's finally here. It's a very well-used park. I also want to thank Councilwoman Weber. I believe it was about a year ago, right here in Town Hall, when we were celebrating the award of our electric vehicle that we got grants for from Assemblyman Steck. And Assemblyman Steck was here, and we were all sitting out there in the parking lot, and Councilwoman Weber mentioned to Assemblyman Steck that she would really like to have grant money for her community programs committee for the senior center that's in really rough shape. And they were talking about that, and Assemblyman Steck could not provide the grant for that senior center, but they did start talking about other grants. And out of that conversation, fortunately, this grant came along. So we're very happy to get this. We're very happy to get this park up and running to the capacity it should be at, so all of our fine young girls can get out there and play some softball. So thanks again.
Here, here.
Thank
Good
you.
job, Lisa.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to echo my colleagues' remarks. And some of you may have come or thought you might have been coming last month for this particular bond, this particular resolution, but we took a little more time to look at this, had some more meetings, and got it better than it was when it first came out. And those are important things. You know, sometimes government, it takes time for things to work, and lots of meetings to get things the best that they can be. And I think that the resolution that we have in front of us right now is that resolution. So very good.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yeah. Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And this resolution passes.
You can go home.
Yes, feel free if you have places to go. Don't mind me. I'll just keep reading, but you guys
Swimming will start
Yeah.
June 14th, friends.
have a wonderful
The
evening.
pool will open Father's Day weekend.
Okay. Next resolution is our first resolution, 2019-39, sponsored by Supervisor Syed. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution authorizing, subject to permissive referendum, the issuance of bonds for the purchase of equipment.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-41, sponsored by Supervisor Syed. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to hire an intern to complete the ADA transition plan and to adjust the hourly rate of the intern.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-42, sponsored by Councilman Delarado. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the submittal of the CDTC Capital Coexist Grant for a pop-up event and bike lane on Grand Boulevard.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-43, sponsored by Councilman Delarada. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the submittal of the terrestrial and aquatic invasive species rapid response grant to the DEC.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-44, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to purchase a trailer for the use by the Highway Department.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-45, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to accept bids for the purchase of various materials to be used by the town in its public works operation during 2019.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-46, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the superintendent of highways to advertise for bids for temporary seasonal laborers in the highway department.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-47, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the superintendent of highways to advertise for bids for certain lawn mowing and trimming services for the Dean Street and Baker Avenue parks.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-48, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the supervisor to enter into an intermunicipal agreement for 2019 with the County of Schenectady for the mowing and maintenance of the Grand Boulevard Islands and the Union Street Route 7 Islands Triangle area.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-49, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize a warrant for the 2018 fourth quarter corporate utility rents.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-50, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the purchase of parts for pump station repairs and maintenance.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-51, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution authorizing the supervisor to enter into a contract for demolition of the water and sewer garage at 2155 River Road.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-52, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution authorizing the supervisor to enter into a contract to accept liquid organic waste.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? So this resolution has been discussed during privilege of the floor section. This one is a tough one for me specifically. The project began before my term as supervisor. When the bonding package did come up for a vote sometime last year, I did bring up a lot of the concerns that were discussed tonight. Ms. Huansky brought up an excellent point. We just sat through a special meeting of the Highway Department to talk about trucks going down Dean Street and making it somewhat unsafe for the people down there. I did spearhead an initiative to put some signs down near Dean Street, redirecting truck traffic off of that street out of, concerns that were voiced by them that they didn't want to have truck traffic on their street. So how do we balance doing things like that while also bringing in initiatives that are going to be putting trucks on a residential road? And those are the negatives. The positives are that it is very good for the environment. It will increase productivity and initiative over at the Pepsi plant. They actually will be able to hire some more people. They're bringing in another product line through the crushing activity. So those are all good things. And this is what the project was intended to do. Unfortunately, it came with a sizable bonding commitment that we are going to be committed to for the next 25 years. And it's enough of an amount that we do have to rely on some kind of revenue source, that we can't get all of it just by increasing fees. And me being the supervisor, being here, every day, many people would come in, pay their tax bill, come right upstairs to me. I have an open door policy. They come in, they sit down with me, and they express their anger really over the fact that for being in Sewer District 6, that their bills went up. And they went up enough that they paid attention and they wanted to say something about it. So hearing all those things, having talked to all those people, it's hard for me. I have to put on the CFO hat and I have to realize that we put a budget together And part of being a chief fiscal officer is making sure that we actualize those revenue numbers. But being a public advocate and being the supervisor, I have to take some of the concerns and inform my vote. And like I said before, I did abstain on the project when it came up for the bonding because I did have those questions and I did feel significantly uncomfortable enough to move forward with a yes vote on that. So those are my opinions. Is there any further discussion?
Just briefly, there was a lot of discussion on this project, but it's certainly not anything new. This project was going on before I came onto the town board 4 years ago. There's a substantial amount of bonding on this project, but it really has very little to do with the acceptance of organic waste. The vast majority of bonding on this project has to do with the improvements that we made to the wastewater treatment plant that we would have to make anyways, whether we were accepting these wastes or not. This was a small part of the overall package. However, it does allow us to run an incredibly efficient water treatment plant that's eventually going to be net zero, as well as giving the town a revenue stream, a very substantial revenue stream at that, as well as being environmental friendly and taking in a waste that causes harm to the environment and disposing of it in a responsible manner. Not only disposing in a responsible manner, but turning it into methane gas. So it seems to me to be a win-win-win-win-win all the way across the board, unless, of course, you're one of the 6 to 10 to 12, however many houses that are affected in the Wittmeyer range, that road and the range very around there, because it's certainly going to have an increase of truck traffic. There's nothing we can do about that. But we have to balance the interests of those dozen or so residents with the interests of the entire town. And it's really a no-brainer. The interests of the 26,000 people have to take precedent over the interest of 6 to 10 people that live in that neighborhood. So it is for those reasons that I would be voting yes on this resolution.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Abstain.
That's 4 yeses, 1 abstain.
And this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-53, sponsored by Councilman McPartlin. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution awarding a contract for the maintenance of the police department's vehicles for 2019.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-54, sponsored by Councilman McPartlin. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with the County of Schenectady for the county Stop DWI program.
Thank you. Can I get a second? I will second. Any discussion?
Yes, this is a very important program that our department's been involved with for many years. Stop DWI, as everyone knows, is very important for the county, for the town. Recently, we had our own DWI checkpoint in November on Union Street, one of the first that we've had in the town. And with the funding that this particular contract allows us to continue to do those types of things and keep our enforcement up.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-55, sponsored by Supervisor Syed. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the supervisor to enter into a contract for data cloud storage and disaster recovery.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-56, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to permanently appoint the Superintendent of Water and Sewer.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-57, sponsored by Supervisor Syed. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to set the salary schedule for a confidential secretary to the supervisor.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Supervisor, I'm going to make a motion to table this. I am just not quite sure of what the job description for this particular job is, and therefore wouldn't have any way to match it up with the qualifications of the applicant.
Okay. So you're making the motion to table? Can I get a second on the motion to table?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to table? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll on the motion to table?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
No,
Okay, so that's 4 yeses, 1 no.
and this resolution passes. Well, the motion to table passes, correction. Next resolution, 2019-58, sponsored by Supervisor Syed. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to make certain budgetary modifications.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll
I
we
got
No.
some questions on this.
have some questions.
So on, they're not numbered, but general fund, let's see, it's page 1, 2, 3. So that would be page 4 for the budget modifications. I see a line here that we're decreasing the youth court clerk and increasing something contractual. I know in finance, we talked about this, that was just for the printer for the court office. And
So we're
we-
taking the money for
Oh,
court?
really quickly, Paul, if I could ask you to approach the lectern. I've heard that people can't hear if you're not at a mic.
Yes, it is for the printer. It is under miscellaneous because our threshold for capitalizing equipment is 2,500. So it's not logged as an under the equipment line. And I approached, or I emailed both Justice and asked them if we should be using contingency, which was offered to them, or the youth court, and that they aren't intending to fill is what they told me. So they preferred, or they opted for that line.
But I thought in finance, the board members, myself, I think Councilwoman McGraw, we didn't want to take it out of that line, and we were
Oh,
going to
well, and if you don't,
make some other,
well, then you could go to, you can do a friendly amendment to contingency instead. They have no other money in their budget. It would be contingency if you don't want to, if you'd rather not use that line.
I was just surprised to see this. It was actually a joke at finance that we
Well,
would spend
I-
the youth court money on
Yeah,
this. So yeah, Bill,
Okay.
anybody can make the friendly amendment. So we're removing it altogether. What are we doing?
You would remove the decrease from the youth court personal services and increase, I believe we're decreasing contingency in on some other line. Is that true?
Oh.
I don't have it in front of me. Let me go grab it.
contingency. That's A001990.4 thousand,
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so
page 1.
We had a very long conversation throughout the budget process about not using lines dedicated for one thing for unrelated purposes and for keeping spending in the appropriate line. So it's just kind of
Well,
odd to us that,
it's always been kind of a longstanding policy to try to keep spend budgets, keep increases in spending within the budget. So, it's always desirable from my standpoint to not go outside a departmental budget, but I can understand if,
Yeah, you would
Well-
normally be correct, but here we're taking money from money that we've dedicated to a children's youth court program to
Well,
buy a printer for
from
the
two
court.
justice that don't want the money, but that's
Just
Right, but we
doesn't-
had a
That's okay.
conversation during the budget process about the importance of keeping this money in, and it was
All right,
already
no, that's fine.
negotiated, and
that's fine.
we
I
all
get-
agreed that we were going to keep the money in, and now all of a sudden we're,
All right, no, that's fine. But the justice have
It's gonna come out
no
that way.
interest in doing what the town board apparently wants to do, but that's okay. We aren't, it's so early in the year, we haven't gone to contingency yet, but I would add a decrease to the appropriation as Councilman McPartlin suggested. It's A001994,000. So we would replace the decrease to A1110-1500 with a decrease to A001994,000 for the same amount. And that is the printer, and they are in dire need of it. I talked to the court clerk today, and it's barely holding on.
So if this doesn't come out, it's not going to come out of the youth court money that's dedicated to children's
Correct.
programs. It would come out of the unreserved fund balance,
Out of the contingency.
out of the contingency fund. Well, I have you up there. That just leads me to one other thing.
Sure.
My understanding from previous meetings over the past several months is that we were going to have a contingency fund balance policy or an unreserved fund balance policy,
Mhm.
however you wanted to put it, which was going to give us some type of guidelines on how we were going to spend our unreserved funds, right? On our
Our fund
contingency
balance,
basis.
yeah,
Yes.
yep.
I know we met about that in October. We've had several meetings. I haven't seen a policy yet. Have we been making any progress on that?
Yeah.
Yes, I
Well-
provided the policy to you, John, several times via email
Uh,
and via print
When's the last time?
last Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
So
I don't,
John, is your question why it's not on the agenda? That's different than
Yes.
not
Okay.
seeing it. So
Yes.
that's
It's
just
still-
clarifying.
we don't have
It's a
anything to
work in
vote on.
progress.
It isn't complete yet is the reason why it's not, in front of you, but we have made progress on it. And I think at the next meeting, it will be complete.
Okay. Do you know how much out of these budget mods were calling contingency spending or contingency
Well, this is 2019 and this is the only use of contingency.
in this bonification, this
Right.
budget mod?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I make a motion that on page 4 of this budget modifications, that line 3 be amended to A001990.4000 contingency decrease for 1895.
Okay. And I will second the motion to amend. Will the clerk please call the roll on the motion to amend?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
Okay, that's 5 yeses.
So the amended motion, we are now going to vote on the resolution as amended. So I'll make the motion on the resolution as amended. If I could get a second.
Second,
Thank you. And will the clerk please call the roll on the motion as amended?
Councilman Delarada.
I am going to vote yes, but I want to express
Abstain,
my-
John. That's what we do around here.
Yeah, I want to express my disappointment that we don't have this contingency fund balance policy yet. And if we don't get that by next month, I'm not going to be able to vote to spend contingency funds without getting a policy on how we're going to do that and what levels of unreserved fund balance we're going to maintain. But given that, I will vote yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses.
And the motion as amended passes. And I will just add really quickly, it's not a contingency fund balance policy, it's a fund balance policy. So it doesn't have any bearing on contingency funds. Rather, it takes the unreserved fund balance, reallocates a certain percentage to a separate capital projects reserve fund. We have a separate line item for contingency used specifically for purposes like this, where there's not enough budgeted allotment for certain expenditures. That comes out of contingency. I just want to make that very clear. The two are entirely separate.
So what do we want to call the policy that we're formulating?
It's a fund balance policy. That's the official term
Okay.
from Office of the State Comptroller. Moving on to Resolution 2019-59, sponsored by Councilman Delarada. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to authorize the submittal of a 10,000 trees and growing application to National Grid.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019-60, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to appoint a temporary seasonal worker in the Parks Department.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to amend this resolution.
Okay, on the motion to amend, I will second.
Thank you. The resolved clause, I'd like to end, if you just go down 1, 2, 3 lines, have a period at the end of basis and take out the dates through June 21st. Can I do that though? But no, I can't do that because the rate of pay is after that.
You're just
So we
going to
could-
remove the
yeah.
line, remove the words through June 21st, 2019.
Okay, all right. So, yeah.
Okay,
So not a period, excuse me. So just on an as-needed basis, take out through June 21st,
Mhm.
2019, and continue at a rate of pay of $9.25 an hour.
okay. Will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and now we will vote on the resolution as amended.
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and the resolution as amended passes. Last resolution, 2019-61, sponsored by Councilwoman McGraw. Will the clerk please read?
A resolution to appoint a person to the position of water and sewer maintenance worker in the Water and Sewer Department.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to apologize to Gary. I didn't realize it was the very last resolution of the night. So, oh well. But we're thrilled to have him join the team. So I'm glad, and I was glad to get to meet him tonight.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Delarada.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGraw.
Aye.
Councilman McPartlin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weber.
Yes.
Supervisor Syed.
Yes,
That's 5 yeses.
and this resolution passes. Before the motion to adjourn, we do have the last page, and that didn't make it to the agenda. It's the appointments by the supervisor, confidential secretary's law. For personnel matters that will involve discussion leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person. If I could have a second on that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion before we enter? All those in favor of entering into executive session signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we're now going to enter into executive session. At the conclusion of our executive session, we will be adjourned. Will the appropriate people stay behind? Everybody else, have a wonderful night. We'll see you here in a couple weeks.
So Bill, do I have to stay for a motion?